with respect to applets, with respect to the swings, and this is very, very interesting part of the programming. And some of you would have already tried it out. But to just to be precise and to give a complete discussion, I've just taken the heading there as event handling in Java. The first and foremost thing which comes to anyone's mind is how do I define an event and what's going to be an event with respect to a language. So now you carry out the programming or you're conversing or you're doing some kind of a communication with respect to an application. Definitely there is a role of an hardware device which connects to your software. That's with respect to your machine. So with simple word, I can tell an event is nothing but that kind of an object which is going to have the description about all those state changes which can occur or which can come up with a certain source. I just repeat, an event could be called as an object which is going to have a description about all those details related to the behavior and the state of the particular input sources. And now some of the common activities what the programmer would be taking when they are communicating to an application or they are communicating to an hardware is probably they may use an mouse to use the communication aspect. Maybe the click of a mouse, the pressing of a button which is there in the mouse. Either the users can press the left button or a right, or they can go with a scroller, or the user can have an entry done to the application by entering a character, or the user can select any element which is already existent in some form design. These are some of the possible activities generally we do whenever we communicate with an application. And these activities or these causes I refer as an event with respect to a language. So now, what are those kinds of sources which basically would be generated for a particular event is a next important question. To address that, we can just take up this part of the slide. So here you can just observe in a Java language, the source for any event is nothing but an object, and the state of a source through which the object changes its behavior, I called it as an event. And with one single application, the sources through which the events could be triggered can be more in number. Maybe I am using my mouse to scroll the screen. I use a keyboard to enter some data and to show some demonstrations to you people. That is one more activity, or that is one more source I can say. Or I connect my machine to a printer. I am doing a task of printing parallelly. There is one more source which is communicating to the system. For all these possible sources, I call it as the event should be capable enough of having the generation of more number of events, and the source should register to what is that event, it is been coming from which device, and who should be responded faster, and what is that notification we can give to the corresponding events. I just repeat it again. A source initially should register to the appropriate listeners, and the listeners in turn should get a notification about the type of an event which it is being occurred with. And just to have a brief, I just take up here. In this diagram, what you are noting is there is a user who is using some kind of conversation with his laptop. Then there is an involvement of a keyboard here. There is a mouse which is pointing at some place. Now, the events are those important part of the applet or a swing programming in a Java language, and all these controlling actions of the related applications would be handled with the term called as an event. And the events, as I said, could be generated from variety of sources as listed in the diagram. Now, you can see here in this diagram, what you are observing is events which are generated from the sources can give the user with the communication aspect of maybe we are trying to fill up some form. The form is being given to you, you're trying to fill the form. The ability of that particular form lies with how do you communicate with your hardware. For example, I have an label by the name called as name. When I click with my mouse, you just look, observe here, I'm making a click with my mouse, and the click of the mouse is taking me to the next line or a next page. And here in this application, the click of the mouse should allow the programmer, should allow the user to enter his or her name, and that point I call as there is a triggering which is done by the mouse. The click of a mouse is allowing the input to capture its data, and that fact I call it as an event. And usually when we work with an event, the event handler mechanism, in a Java language, we have to have an importing of a package called as java.awt.event package. And you can ask me a question, what is this AWT standing for? And how do I see what the AWT is contained with? So I repeat, AWT there is nothing but abstract window toolkit. And this is that kind of a toolkit which will provide the programmer with all those type of text boxes, or it could be the labels, or it could be the buttons, the drop down menus, or it could come with an background change of a color. All those are the attributes which will be found in this abstract window toolkit. And how we are controlling these kind of buttons or the text boxes, or it is in the form of actions, those are all I can say like it's an events which are triggered by the respective applications. So now we just try to come up with one important scenario which is called as the delegation model with respect to an event. So here, the delegation model is that kind of a model which could be visualized as a modern approach for handling any type of an events which could be triggered by an application. So a delegation model will obviously have one important content called as a source. A delegation model would be having the second content called as listener, and the delegation model again should have the registry associated with it. So now, what are these sources? What are these listeners? Is the first question. A source is one which generates the event. A listener is one which will wait for the event to occur and the process the event whenever it is being received by the system. I repeat, a source is one which generates the event. A listener is one which receives the event from the appropriate source, processes the event, and finally it fetches the event which is processed to the registry. And the registry's role is to maintain or to have a tracking about the number of events which could be occurred in one particular applications. Now, due to this fact, the listener always receives the event which it wants to, and the listener always aims at processing all those kinds of events which are triggered by the application or a system. Now, moving further with our discussion, we can see on the application there is one actual box where you are seeing all those social kind of communications which we are into today in today's world. You can observe there is YouTube, there is a Wi-Fi or a communication channel, there is a Facebook, there is something which I call it as an Android or it's a phone. There is a Twitter, there is an Apple icon, it's an Yahoo. You have a Google Plus, there is a YouTube. There is again a Pinnet, then you have a WhatsApp and a Drive and so on. So what are all these symbols or all these icons doing is it's conveying some kind of pictorial representation through which I can keenly say this is what is an actual functionality or a purpose of an that particular diagram. And I as a programmer, I have to create these icons. I have to place these icons. I also should initiate some working when the user is pressing with his hand or the user is clicking with the mouse to carry out its sub functionality. And that is what I call it as a programming, which will be handled with respect to the events in par with applets and swings. So here, in an event delegation model, whenever the object is created, it contains all those necessary information about the changes, about the state, about the behavior of the particular event. The events which are generated whenever the user interacts with an system in a better way, I adopt the term called as graphical user interface. And one of the most popular graphical user interface is the which is found on the screen, and you can observe there whoever is designing the programs, they always will aim at providing a better GUI. A better GUI word is immediately pointed at it should give a look and feel approach to the user who is using the system. It should also provide the valuable information upon the click upon the selection of a particular button. And here the events are also generated whenever the user presses the button, the user selects the key, the user selects the list of options which are found in the drop down menu, or the user just makes a select from a single line text box and so on. These are some of the actions or an activities which could be found with the normal graphical user interfaces. And there are certain indirect sources also for the events which are not caused by an interaction of an user. And these kind of indirect sources is also of interest for us to explore. Now, look here in this diagram, you can identify the indirect sources through which the events can occur would be timer. That is, whenever the user just clicks on this button timer, automatically it should be programmed in such a way there should be a closing of an application. The other indirect source for an event could be counter. Whenever the count reaches a value, it should halt, or it could be the software failures, or it could be the hardware failures, which can be considered as an indirect source for an event. Now, to precisely tell, with the Java language, the sources for an event can come from various places, and these sources of event should be registered by the appropriate listeners, and these listeners in turn should get notification of the event. And now, we before I just give you the description about the usages of these methods, let us just take up the places through which the events could be triggered, and to make you people understand it, I'll just get back to the same code. The terms which we come across and the classes through which I see the events. Yeah, I'll just give you a case study. You just tell me from this case study, what's your understanding? Just look at this diagram. Identify what are the possible actions we can take on this diagram. It's a question for you people. What's that you're observing from this diagram? Is there an event which will be triggered? Come on, I require a reply. Ravichandra? Ravichandra? Rashmi? Rashmi? Rachita? Rachita?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Pa. Can you just find out what is that it's giving you the information from this slide? We are talking about events, event handling in Java language. So that's the topic. And I said that there are three important terms called as source, listener, along with a register. And I am just giving you an UI, which is giving you some information. I want you to explore this information from the slide and tell me what did you understood from this slide. So from here, I will just take the talk and tell you the role or importance of event handling. First will be Rachita. The second student whom I can pick now is Shayan. The third is Srinidhi. All the three, if you don't give your answer, it's marked absent, and I'm doing it seriously. Whatever the information you have with your mind looking at this slide, you have to convey me, that's all. Let's begin with Rachita only. Rachita, can you just tell ma?
Yes, ma'am. By clicking the click button, an event will occur, and the listener will wait for the panel to open, and after that, that thing will be registered.
Okay. So here, yeah, you're to some extent you're fine, and you gave me the answer. So you observe this presentation. There is one UI. The first and foremost thing is it's a graphical user interface. So we are observing here from this graphical user interface, there is one button which is created by the programmer, and button is having some name. And note here, the button is placed in the middle of the screen, that is at the topmost level. Are you understanding these simple things? Yes or no? Rachita?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, pa. So look here, the button is placed at the topmost level and it is taking its position as middle. And next to this button, click, there is one more text box. I cannot call it as a text box, it's a label. There is a labeled string which is given as second panel. So the possible options for this UI would be the click through the mouse, or the selection which can be done by the keyboard. I have two ways. Either I can use a click of a mouse, that is the left click or a right click of a mouse, I click on this button, it automatically should perform its action. That's one point. The second way in which I can observe here is I can make use of my tab, make a selection once again using a keyboard. So there are two kinds of events which are occurred there. One is keyboard, I call it as a keyboard event. If I am using a mouse, I call it as a mouse event. And this mouse event has three possible places: the left click, the right click, the middle, which we use for scroller. So these are the events which I observe from this actual UI. The second point I asked there is what are listener? When this action or an activity is carried out, there should be some component inside this window screen who should be able to listen to my click. I call that listen to the click of a mouse as mouse listener, listening to the keyboard entry value as a keyboard listener, and the window you're observing here, this presentation with this box, I call it as a window. And this window has the minimize, maximize, and a close, which is an closing of an application. This is again one more aspect, I call it as an event. And if an event of window is there, then only I am able to connect to mouse. If I don't have a windowing event, definitely I cannot connect to the mouse or a keyboard. So the first type of an event in this diagram which I am observing is the windowing event. And inside that windowing event, I can have many number of other events which could be triggered. Then the window should have its core functionalities being observed as a minimize, maximize, and a close. And that also should be recorded in a registry. And that's the points which we are taking up and we explore to understand the event handling mechanism with the Java programming language. Did you all follow now with this simple example? What are we learning and why is it essentially required? Say something, yes or no. Srinidhi?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Now observe, if you have got some aspect of understanding, from which places I will get the events and what actions would be taken for each and every event is the next term. So here, whenever I do some kind of activities or an actions, all these actions would be found with this main class called as an event class. And the event class would have its subclasses called as window event, the mouse event, the key event, the action event, the mouse motion event, or even it could be the item or an maybe it is a focus event and so on. There are a lot of events which could come across whenever we deal with an event handling. And the event listeners are probably those kind of a concept which will allow the programmer to mention or to specify before they carry out the implementation by adapting some key classes which is already been defined by the programmer. Now, to carry these basic event handling routines and the mechanisms, let us just try to take up the simplest form of an example, which I called as creation of an button, creation of an label. Then I can say like the creation of an a value called as a radio button, creation of a drop down menu, and so on. So look at this class. When you observe from this simple UI, we understand there is an input text box where the value will be taken from the user. There is a button which is going to give an action actionable information, and that button, I call it as an action event. You can observe there is one checkboxes. Through this checkbox, there are some elements or an items which can be added into the system. Then you observe here there is something which is given as a description, and that description I give as describe your athletic ability. And this description we call it as a focus event. Then there is one more event which I call it as a text event. And here in this text event, you could note the user can enter the information in this box, and that is in multi-line text box which could be created. Then we have got a container, and inside this container we are trying to give a string or a value to be stored. Now there is one event which I am observing from this UI, and that's called as an adjustment event. And this adjustment is one you're getting it when you're just scrolling. You are getting that four arrow mark, and that is the one type of an event which is observed as an adjustment event. Just look at this case study which I have taken. Now I will take you to one more application. You need to identify what is the type of an event which could be observed in this application. I'll just give 2 minutes time. Look at this diagram. I have some information from this diagram. Now from this information, let us connect to one more application where you are giving me the answer. Or if you want to take a snap of it, you can just take it, so that it will be easier for you to identify in the application which I'll show you right now. Is it over?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, I will take two applications now, which you already are working in on day-to-day life. Yeah. Now, from this Microsoft Word, can you identify at least few events which could be triggered? Do I have a window event here? You simply have to say yes or no, that's all. Do I have a windowing event which can be observed in this Word application?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
If I have a windowing event, can you just tell what will be the functionalities of this window? The entire area which is covered on the screen, I call it as a window. And this window has, see here, I just maximized. I am just making it smaller. So this is all not magic which is happening. It's all the programming which has been handled and which has been written. So your task is just to identify and tell me. If I have a windowing event here, do you think the windowing event has the important functions, something like maximizing the screen, minimizing the screen, and quitting from the application? Yes or no again?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, fine. I understood there is one event window, and to trigger this windowing event, did I depend on mouse pointer or a mouse?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
Yes. So what is that you see behind there? Do I have a mouse event which is occurred?
yes, ma'am.
Yes. If I'm having a mouse event, now look at the same window screen. Look at this point. You're observing an arrow at the extreme right side. Am I able to increase the length?
Yes,
There is
ma'am.
a
Yes, ma'am.
change with the width. there is again, I can do the changes with the length. So do you think it is the event, what I call as an adjustment event? Am I altering or adjusting the screen or not? Yes or no again?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we are able to flexibly move the window based on diagonal, based on maybe the x-axis or a y-axis. And all this kind of operations again can be observed with the help of either keyboard or a mouse. So I trigger the action with my mouse, and making use of a mouse, I am either increasing the length or I am either increasing the height of this entire window. So you can see there, you covered the adjustment event. Now I am again trying to just add some kind of a form. Maybe I just take up a selection. Okay, here I have to insert a form. Okay, no way. This I just take out this application. Here I can have the increasing done to a particular design, and that design can come from an actual text box, or it can come for me from an radio button, or it can come from a scroller, and so on. And to handle these kind of actions, I call the event as a component event, and the container which is found in the event, and an action which I will try to add it with respect to a value. And now to just to have an initiation done, I'll just get back to the same Teams. You could observe with this Teams, I have given a question that's the quiz was given yesterday, and this is what is the statistics what has been received by me. Supposingly assume I would like to have an editing done to this quiz. Assume here what you are observing, it's an text box through which I am trying to trigger or I am trying to put up some information. Are you seeing in this application? This is a form which is created yesterday by me. And inside this form, are you seeing there is a value which I am adding, that is nothing but your textual information. And to add to this textual information, either I should depend on the mouse, I should either just make a selection of adding an question or deleting a question. And now the other important aspect which you can observe from the same first question would be, there are some radio buttons which are occurred, and for these radio buttons I am giving an answer or I am just saying some information. And that is one more activity or an event which is being triggered by the help of focus. So if I would have not given any value there, it is not there in focus. If I am having a value and it is active in state, I call that as an focus event. And followed by this focus event, there is one more event called as container. If there is a value which is found inside this text box or inside this maybe the checklist, or it could be in any form, we refer that as an actual values, and that is yet again stored with a mechanism called as a container event. So what we covered now is if I have a design or I have an UI, UI will give lot of events to be triggered, and UI will tell us there are lot of listeners which will come in par with an actual component. And finally an click, the click of the mouse will depend on the button called as enter my information in this example. With our previous quiz example, you will get a button called as submit. And by the click of a submit, your all the data which you have entered, data which has been focused, would get stored in the database. And that is what I call it as an action event. And to carry out the programming for of this type of event classes and event handlers, we will have the importance being observed as the two important classes which goes with all type of events are key and a mouse. And you can see the design. There is a wheel which is called as a scroller, and that wheel is yet again one more type of an event, which I call it as a mouse wheel event. And each of these events is having with its own activities being performed, and each will be described with the necessary functions, the constants, the prototypes, the actual constructor methods. How do I carry out the coding part? That and all will try to explore it in detail. Before we start with the programming, let us just have a brief about the total understanding about the events, the causes for the events, and finally then we can just confidently we can take up the programming, and you can also see the concepts of the programming with your understanding. So now we will observe with an event handlers. We have the lot of important constructs to be observed, and that's called as the event mechanism or an event handler routines. So first and foremost, event handler routine, which I can just take up is creation of a text box, adding a label, and then we are trying to have an increasing done for this text box, either in terms of rows and columns. To create that simple application, first and foremost thing is I need to know the actual syntax to create this text box. That's the first point. Second is I need to know where this text box should be placed, either to the left side, or either to the middle, or either to the right side. What is that position it should take? And the third point which I should permit for this application is I give some information into the text box. That information should be displayed for me, and that should also tell me whether the next line is visible for me or not. That is third condition which I have to test it with the program. And there would also be a possibility of we giving or setting a background to the particular created window. And to handle these type of simple creations, again in our Java program itself, we have lot of built-in classes, and making use of these built-in classes, we can easily write the programs and execute it. And the classes, where does I find its repository? You can ask me a question. All these related classes for the creation of buttons, creation of text boxes, the labels, or it is a radio button, or it is a drop down menu, the combo box, the select pane, the scroller, slider, everything you will get it easily if I refer to a package called as AWT package, and that is called as Abstract Window Toolkit. And AWT also has a lot of disadvantages when it comes for programming. And one of the important disadvantage there is it does not give the programmer with look and feel mechanism. To avoid this, no, people have given a newer concept called as swings, where we can design in a flexible way. We can add a component wherever it is required, and we could also give a display patterns very neatly. And that's the one again we learn with this module. So each on a step-by-step process, and it is very interesting module. The Fifth module is very interesting, and it is the easiest also. If you give your mind, try to understand the things in a broader sense. And wherever it is required, I'll just try to give you the importance with respect to the materials as well. Okay, just stay connected for a while. I'll have to download the attendance.